name is Odumade. I'm founder and CEO at Chekkit Technologies. And today I'll be speaking to you about technological developments redefining international trade. But before I go in depth, I'm just going to touch briefly on the history of international trade as regards technology. Now, before 2 centuries ago, most of the time, sailors sailing from one end of the world to another depended a lot on the currents of the wind before they could sail. But in 1865, there was the innovation of steamships. Now, steamships allowed sailors to be able to move to whatever direction they want, regardless of the current of the wind, right? Because basically there was a motor engine propelling the ship in whatever direction you wanted it to go in. Now, this led to the history of international trade being changed forever, as it reduced the cost of shipping, transporting product from one end of the world to another end by 50%. Right? Some companies saw up to 60% reduction in the cost of shipping, and also time reduction as well. Now, this created enormous profits for the business of shipping during this century. Now, fast forward to after the World War, which was about 4 years, there was a rapid change in the process of shipping, which was a new standard was brought into shipping, which was containers. Now, containerization enabled a proper way of an organized form, rather, of transporting goods and services on a ship, right? So the containers could be arranged in such a way that it's a lot easier to, to use to maximize the space that is available on the ship. Now, this has led to several innovations around containers and containerization to date, especially when it comes to tracking. Now, let's fast forward a little bit to the current century we're in. About 2 decades ago or 3 decades ago, a lot changed. A lot's changed around shipping. As you could sit at the comfort of your home with a device in your hand like a mobile phone or computer, with a click of a button, order for an item and track it till it gets to you. Track it in real time till it gets to you. Even though we know the traffic tracking is not as efficient as when you know exactly where the product is. But I mean, this technology works, right? You can tell where it is in transit, you can tell when it's arrived at your local, at its destination. Now, this created innovation have been created rather by SMEs and local logistic companies, e-commerce stores, e-commerce platforms, digital companies that have created these solutions in this decade, solving the problem of drop shipping or e-commerce shipping to last mile. However, there's still a lot of work to be done. Interesting thing is new technologies today, when you combine them together, create a new trend, right? And this new trend creates a new market opportunity and takes over the market, literally. Companies that mastered the combination of technologies like artificial intelligence, robotics, blockchain technology are able to automate their supply chain. Take, for instance, manufacturers that can automate production line, with automated machines handling manufacturing of cars and other large products, and even smaller ones, to demand prediction by a network of distributors in local markets that know exactly, what they can estimate the demand that should be expected from wholesalers and retailers in the market that they distribute to, based on data they've collected and based on the network of trucks that they've created as well, which automatically efficiently allows trade within a region, right? Or within borders, cross-border, at least within a continent. Finally, track and trace also with logistics, coupled with logistics, also helps to fine-tune the end or the last mile journey of the product delivery. With a mobile phone, you can track exactly where your product is in real time. Now, this innovation has led to countries that were developing or underdeveloped some 3 decades ago to become the world leaders in innovation, to become the world leaders in international trade as well, reducing their cost of shipping drastically, above 30% to 60% on the average, increasing competition, global competition, where these countries are beginning to create new technologies or new solutions that even developed countries want. The United States of America signed a trade agreement with China, a renewed trade agreement with China actually, in 1976. The first shipments between both countries that year was worth over $4 billion. In 2017, the value of shipment between China and America in 1 year was over $600 billion. Today, China leads the world, the world of international trade, doing over $3 trillion rather, excuse me, $3 trillion worth of sales with the rest of the world yearly. This data here shows the top 20 export countries worldwide in 2019. And at this time, China was topping with over $2 trillion worth of trade across to the rest of the world. Where you can see the countries that were, initially leading, dropping down to third place, fourth place. So you can see a couple of more Asian countries as well in the top 10: Japan, Korea, Hong Kong. Now, this shows that a good mastering of technologies, of recent technologies today, can propel a country, can propel a nation, can propel an economy also, to bloom. But what does the future hold for international trade? This mystical globe here can't tell us exactly what we want to know, but data can. And let's look at the top promising blockchain projects today and look at what investments large organizations, major organizations in industry today are making globally. Maersk is a shipping company primarily, right? But they're investing in blockchain technology to digitize supply chain information. Ing is a security company, but they are providing security also for distributed ledger technology, basically for blockchain, securing blockchain. Blockchain is already said to be secure, right? Because it's distributed ledger. However, Ing is even providing more bulletproof technology to protect the blockchain. Novartis, with its pharma ledger, are providing ways to track and trace pharma supply chain, patient data, and clinical trials. Visa is creating business-to-business connection that offers faster and secure payments cross-border, right? So foreign exchange won't be a problem, right? Foreign exchange is one of the problems of international trade, right? Also, Walmart is creating traceability for food supply chain with the blockchain technology. Other companies investing in artificial intelligence are doing so to be able to predict future trends, enhance data security, optimize data processing, improve data availability, because that's also a very huge one for developing markets, data being available to be used to analyze and predict the future. And most importantly, improve customer experience. Now, before we go deep into what the future holds, so to say, let's look at a case study and compare the music industry to supply chain industry, right? Now, the music industry has evolved. I used to run a music company, right, where my platform was to distribute music to 5 African countries and was doing so through connection to major aggregators of music. Now, there was a standard way to connect to these aggregators, right? There were languages, different languages that you could use to connect. However, there's a particular system of connection that allows your server to collect music from this aggregator service for it to push to your server, for your server to push it to the end consumers. Now, this was an organized supply chain, and this is in the current state of today in the music industry. And you can see the evolution of music, right? Yes, the supply chain has also evolved. I agree. Now with smartphones, you can also know where your product is in real time, right? But does the rest of the supply chain talk to each other? You know, is it possible for us to have a standardized process where major middleware providers or software providers in supply chain for international trade, for import and export, have technologies that can speak to each other with very little integration? And not just speak to each other, can connect the dots across the supply chain end to end. This is possible. And the future really holds that possibility with the advancement of technology and the combination of technologies as well. The future would involve a lot of near field communication in supply chain. But what are the challenges of having a connected supply chain future? By connected supply chain future, I'm talking about connected in both developed world countries and developing countries as well. I'd rather not use the word underdeveloped because these countries are also developing as we speak. One of the major problems is, can these developing countries meet the standards of major developed markets? Basically, can they provide products that will be exportable to developed markets? But the answer is yes, because countries in Asia have done it, right? And how do they do it? Creating standardized process that every retailer, every producer locally have to abide by. And there were service providers that helped in doing that, the private sector. So an authority decree for serialization, for instance, with endorsed credible private sector partners that are working with these local companies in regions that are developing, can make this happen quickly for that economy. But really, how quickly and how easily can this happen for SME and producers, to obtain or adopt these new technologies and be able to benefit directly? The private sector's realization partner provide access to infrastructures through tailored user interfaces. That's the solution. Now, the private sector serialization partner provides serialization to products during the time that are moving through the supply chain from the manufacturing point. So this serialization service are going to be, tied in basis to existing infrastructures. So we're not necessarily looking at changing the process. We're looking at enhancing the process and making it a lot more efficient, more effective through private sectors. Let me take you back to this chart that talks about Global Standard 1 and their initiative to create an ecosystem for product tracking or product data tracking. Now, this system is already implemented in regions like the United States, as well as most of North America, Europe, and some parts of Asia. A little bit of Africa, part of Africa also has this process in place. What does this process entail? It basically means that the producer provides the information the product is producing with an identity on the products at tertiary level, basically pallets, secondary level, that's the carton, and primary level, that's the packet. Now, this service provides information to the central database. The central database, as you can see here, registers those information data into the central database. Now, while the product is moving in the supply chain from the seller data pool to the buyers, basically import and export, the data is also transferred as well. And at the point it gets to the seller, to the buyer, and the buyer authenticates the product, either at secondary package level or tertiary package level, the information is fed back into the central database, letting the central database know the status of the goods in transit. Till it gets to the final buyer, where there's an authentication at retail as well. This authentication feeds back into the buyer data pool system, which feeds back into the central database. And automatically you can put together, the different parts of the journey of that particular product to be able to tell the story of the product end to end, right? However, the system is largely controlled primarily by the manufacturer and the body involved, which means the buyer and the final consumer do not really play a lot of role in making this entire system possible. However, how can we create a middleware infrastructure for supply chain in the future that will take every stakeholder into consideration and have a unique experience for every stakeholder that's valuable for that stakeholder, by the way. And blockchain can be of help to that. So this is the central database, the GS1 CIS, which I just explained. Imagine it connected to a blockchain layer, right? And this blockchain layer feeds several solution providers who provide solutions like serialization services, inventory management services, track and trace services to stakeholders in the supply chain, as well as authentication services to consumers. Now, this way, these serialization service providers can collate data from different stakeholders at different points during the journey of a product, when it moves from the manufacturer to the distributor, to the wholesaler, to the retailer, to the final consumer, and feed it back into the central database on the blockchain layer. And the blockchain layer feeds it back into the GS1 system or the central database. This is a system that can be put in place in developing countries. In Africa, for instance, there are already existing solution providers in the market. The needs to be decreased to make these solution providers provide services that stakeholders would actually use because it will solve problems for them. And stakeholders would be happy to use them and even pay for these services because it helps them optimize their business processes. Once there's a standardization of how digital information should be passed across the supply chain, we will have a more effective and active supply chain that would be reactive to situations like counterfeiting, situations like diversion of products, also situations like consumers dying as a result of counterfeit medications, for instance. But there's a lot of importance on consumers when it comes to international trade, because a little effect that can change the behavior of a consumer can sporadically cost manufacturers huge losses. So it's important to be aware, or also to be concerned about the sensitivity of the information that could be collected or accumulated from consumers. Chekkit Technologies, the company that I am the head of, provides this sort of services for brands, for producers that want to sell in Africa, that want to sell in the Middle East, that want to sell in regions where consumer data are not readily available. We can help with the acquisition of the consumer data and also help to predict what trends to expect in the market with your product. Potentially help to introduce to distributors in that new interested in your product. As a matter of fact, create an ecosystem that allows manufacturers, distributors, retailers to trade on an ecosystem, a secured ecosystem that's placed on the blockchain network, which means all parties on that system are registered, are recognized, are identifiable, which makes track and trace super easy, which makes it easier to also track batches that might have adverse effects on consumers. So overall, understanding consumers' buying pattern through data directly acquired from the consumers will completely redefine international trade history forever. So what are the benefits? What really are the benefits of focusing on customer experience innovation for international trade? One for sure is it will increase the ability to predict trends and also give you quicker observation of trends. It reduces the cost of doing business in new markets considerably because you can easily meet with distributors and producers in new markets without even traveling there, firstly. It also enables you to have a globalized markets in real sense with data that can help you ascertain which markets to go to next. So these are really the benefits of what the future holds when it comes to international trade, innovation. And technology is the way to go to have a revamp of history on international trade. Thank you very much. And I'll be looking forward to your questions.